Bottled water feels like the safest choice you can make. Clear, pure, reliable. You drink it because you believe it's better. Better than soft drinks, better than tap water, better for your health. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people have no idea what's actually behind the bottled water they drink every single day. They trust the label, they trust the brand, they trust the image of mountains, springs, and untouched nature. And they never ask questions. But bottled water is not just water, it's an industry. A global business built on plastic, transport, branding, and assumptions. In Australia, bottled water is everywhere. Supermarkets, petrol stations, gyms, schools. It's marketed as clean and natural. Yet very few consumers know where it truly comes from, how it's stored, or what happens to it before it reaches their hands. This video is not about panic. It's not about fear. It's about awareness. Because when you drink something every day, small details stop being small. Today, we're breaking down 9 bottled water brands sold in Australia that you should seriously rethink buying. And at the end, we'll show you 2 that actually stand out as better options. Not because they're perfect, but because they're more transparent. Stay with us. Because the brands you trust the most are often the ones you question the least. Let's start with something important. This list is not about saying these waters are poison or illegal. It's about patterns, it's about transparency, and it's about what brands choose not to explain to you. Because when a product is consumed daily, even small compromises matter. Number 9, Mount Franklin. Mount Franklin is one of the most recognizable bottled water brands in Australia. It feels familiar, safe, almost automatic. But Mount Franklin is owned by a global soft drink corporation, and that changes the conversation. When water is produced at massive scale, decisions are driven by efficiency, logistics, and shelf life. Consumers rarely see clear information about long-term storage, heat exposure during transport, or how often quality is independently verified. The water may start clean, but the journey matters more than most people realize. Number 8, Pump water is everywhere. Cheap, convenient, grab and go. But Pump is sold almost exclusively in soft plastic bottles. And plastic is not neutral. Plastic reacts to heat, to time, to storage conditions. When bottled water is transported, stored, and displayed under varying temperatures, the container becomes part of the product. Whether brands acknowledge it or not, that's a detail most consumers never think about. Number 7, Cool Ridge. Cool Ridge markets itself as Australian spring water. Clean branding, nature imagery, words like pure and fresh. But when it comes to bottled water, specifics matter. Not just spring water, but which spring, how often is it tested, and what happens between the source and the shelf. When brands rely on broad claims instead of clear, verifiable details, they're asking consumers to trust, without evidence. Number 6, Woolworth's brand bottled water. Home brand bottled water is built on one principle: cost efficiency. Lower prices come from bulk sourcing, simplified processes, and minimal disclosure. You're told it meets standards. You're not told much else. And while it may pass basic requirements, there's very little information for consumers who want to look deeper. When water is stripped down to a price point, transparency is often the first thing to go. Number 5, Coles brand bottled water. Same model. Different logo. Coles home brand water is designed for volume, not scrutiny. The branding feels clean and reassuring, but detailed sourcing information is limited. For a product marketed as pure, being asked to simply trust the process should raise questions. Number 4, Evian. Evian is a global icon. It's marketed as premium, natural, and sourced from the French Alps. But here's the reality many people overlook. Evian is shipped thousands of kilometers to reach Australian shelves. That means long transport times, extended storage, and a massive environmental footprint, all for a product that is fundamentally just water. At that point, you're not paying for hydration, you're paying for branding and distance. Number 3, Voss. Voss is luxury bottled water. Tall glass bottles. Minimalist design, high price. But luxury does not automatically mean better. Voss invests heavily in image yet provides limited consumer-facing detail about why the water itself is superior. When design speaks louder than data, it's worth asking what you're really buying. Number 2. Fiji water. Fiji water is often seen as the gold standard. Exotic source. Volcanic rock filtration. Premium positioning. But transporting water from the Pacific Islands to Australia for everyday hydration raises serious sustainability and practicality questions. The longer the journey, the more variables are introduced, and when logistics matter more than local sourcing, the purity narrative starts to weaken. Number 1. Flavored and sparkling bottled waters. This one surprises people. Flavored and sparkling waters are often marketed as healthier alternatives. But the moment water becomes flavored, carbonated, or enhanced, it becomes more processed. More steps, more variables, more compromises. If you're choosing bottled water for simplicity and purity, these products move in the opposite direction. The turning point. At this stage, one thing should be clear. Most bottled water brands rely on assumption. They assume consumers won't ask where the water really comes from. They assume packaging won't be questioned. They assume familiarity equals trust. But trust without transparency is fragile. And that's where the final part of this video matters most, because not all bottled water follows this model. At this point, one thing should be clear. Not all bottled water is bad, but blind trust is. Most bottled water brands don't survive on transparency. They survive on habit. They rely on the fact that water feels simple, that it feels too basic to question, too familiar to investigate. But the truth is, water is the one thing you consume more than anything else, day after day, year after year, which means details matter. There are bottled water brands that do things differently, brands that clearly disclose their source, brands that limit unnecessary processing, brands that treat water as a responsibility, not just a product. Those brands don't shout the loudest. They don't rely on exotic stories or glossy imagery. They rely on information. And that's the difference. The 2 bottled water brands that stood out in our review were chosen for one reason. They leave fewer unanswered questions. Not because they're perfect, but because they're more honest. When you choose bottled water, you're not just choosing hydration. You're choosing what you trust. So next time you reach for a bottle, pause for a moment and ask yourself, do I trust this? Because I've actually looked into it? Or because I always have? If this video helped you think differently, subscribe, because the next everyday product you trust might be the next one we take a closer look at. And awareness, not fear, is how better choices begin.